Picture this, right? You are, put yourself in the scenario. You're staring at a $10,000 piece of enterprise software you just authorized your company to buy.
Oh, that is always a stressful moment.
Right. The invoice is paid, the accounts are provisioned, and the only instruction you get from the vendor is like a link to a 40-page PDF manual.
Which nobody reads. Ever.
Exactly. In that exact moment, your brain isn't looking for the software's exciting new features. It is actively looking for the exit. You're already regretting the purchase.
Oh, absolutely. Buyer's remorse hits instantly.
Yeah. And yet, when the company that built that software tries to figure out why their churn rate is so high, they usually just, sit in a conference room, stare at a completely blank whiteboard and ask,
how do we fix our user experience?
Yes. How do we fix our UX?
A dreaded blank whiteboard. It is just the absolute bane of modern product design. I mean, you have a room full of highly paid executives drinking stale coffee, essentially waiting for a ghost of a good idea to miraculously appear.
A ghost? I love that.
Well, it is. They rely on unstructured brainstorming, which is, frankly, the definition of lazy, useless diagnosis.
So today, we are bringing an end to the blank whiteboard. Welcome to the Innovation Unpacked Deep Dive. We're exploring a comprehensive masterclass dossier compiled by Mike Boysen, which maps out 17 universal customer journeys.
And the central paradigm-shifting revelation of this manifesto, and I love this part, is that customer friction isn't some random, invisible ghost haunting your product.
Right. It's not random at all.
No, it is deeply chronological, it is structural, and most importantly, it is highly predictable, if you know exactly where to look.
Which is such an optimistic way to view it. But let's get into the historical context here, because for decades, the tech industry has operated under this assumption that innovation requires a sudden flash of genius.
Right, but Boysen's article argues that the human brain is inherently lazy.
Oh, completely.
If you don't force a product team into a corner with rigid constraints, their brains default to what is easy. They'll just spit out an incremental feature update.
Like, let's make the button blue.
Exactly. Or, let's add an artificial intelligence chatbot to the homepage. They treat the symptom, not the underlying disease.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of how we fix this. Because the dossier doesn't just list out problems, It provides this incredibly elegant structural blueprint.
Yeah, a fusion of frameworks, really.
Right. We're taking Doblin's 10 types of innovation, specifically looking at how a company configures operations, structures its offerings, and designs the customer experience. And we are slamming those together with an innovation matrix full of structural and marketing triggers.
Well, can we pause and actually explain what Doblin's framework is? Because people throw that name around in boardrooms all the time without understanding the actual mechanics.
Go for it. Break it down.
So Larry Keeley and the Doblin Group analyzed thousands of successful innovations and realized that almost everyone obsessively focuses on just the product like, the features, the speed, the specs.
Which is the absolute easiest thing for competitors to copy.
Exactly. The Doblin framework argues that you build impenetrable defensive moats by innovating in the background. You innovate the profit model, the underlying network, the channel delivery. You apply rigid, counterintuitive constraints to verified friction.
It's like, comparing the traditional blank canvas approach to this framework is like trying to build a house without a blueprint, whereas the 17-journey framework is like having a microscopic X-ray of the customer's timeline.
That's a great analogy.
And for those of you listening, stick around for the end of this conversation because we aren't just going to dream up wild product ideas.
No, we need to prove they work.
Right. We are going to unpack the mathematical validation engine to de-risk them. If you're building software right now, ask yourself how you justify new features to your CFO. We'll show you how to prove these ideas work with cold, hard math before you write a single line of code.
But to understand the blueprint, we really have to start at the absolute beginning of the user's timeline, the pre-use era.
The starting line. This is everything that happens before the customer actually extracts a single ounce of core value from whatever you're selling.
And historically, the very first step, the selection phase, is where companies create massive cognitive overload for the buyer.
Oh, it's so true. Just put yourselves in the buyer's shoes for a second. You're sitting there staring at a sea of identical competitors, trying to figure out who is actually going to solve your specific problem.
And the historical approach for companies here is just to shout the loudest.
Yeah. You look at a traditional SaaS pricing page, SaaS, or SaaS as we call it, and it's a nightmare. They cram a million bullet points, 3 different pricing tiers, and a dozen check marks onto the screen, essentially screaming, "We do everything for everyone."
Which is exhausting. I mean,
Yeah.
when you try to be everything to everyone, the buyer has to do the heavy lifting of figuring out if your tool actually fits their niche workflow. So, the dossier introduces our first pivot strategy. We take the reverse or invert marketing trigger and we map it to Doblin's brand type of innovation. Instead of shouting your feature list, you aggressively isolate and highlight exactly what your product does not do.
Wow.
You lean heavily into anti-marketing.
Anti-marketing, telling people not to buy your product. I mean, the immediate reaction from any sales director listening to this is going to be sheer panic. You are actively trying to sell software, so why on earth would you intentionally drive traffic away from your landing page?
Because it radically alters your customer acquisition cost, your CAC.
Yeah.
Look, if you attract everyone, your sales team spends hundreds of hours doing demo calls with companies who are fundamentally a bad fit and will churn in 3 months anyway.
That makes sense. It's a waste of resources.
Exactly. Look at the business-to-business space. The traditional customer relationship management market is terribly bloated.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be the next Salesforce. But then you look at a company like Basecamp. Their historical approach to marketing was essentially, if you have a 500-person enterprise sales team, close this browser tab right now.
I love that.
We will break your workflow. We do not have the complex permission structures you need. We are built exclusively for 5-person hit squads who hate data entry.
They are literally telling the massive lucrative enterprise clients to take their money elsewhere.
They are. And by inverting the target audience and actively pushing away the enterprise, they instantly win the absolute unquestioning loyalty of the small to medium business market.
Oh, because the 5-person agency sees that and thinks, finally, a tool built just for me.
Right. You've used brand inversion to make the selection process entirely effortless for your actual target demographic while simultaneously dropping your acquisition costs. You aren't fighting a bidding war for enterprise Google ad keywords.
I see the mechanical genius in B2B, but let me push back on this when it comes to the consumer space. Think about Hinge, the dating app. Their entire multi-million-dollar marketing slogan is designed to be deleted. Is that actually a structural innovation, or is it just a really clever copywriting gimmick?
It's a totally fair skepticism.
I mean, they're a venture-backed tech company. Don't they secretly need their daily active user metrics to go up? Don't they want you scrolling forever?
But the article argues this fundamentally alters their unit economics. The dating app market was previously flooded with platforms like Tinder trying to keep you swiping endlessly, right?
Yeah, infinitely.
Their core metric was time in app, which led to infinite gamification and massive user burnout. Hinge inverted the entire selection criteria. By actively marketing the disposal of their own product, they built immediate deep trust with a demographic that was exhausted by endless swiping.
Okay, wait, that's really interesting.
For a user burned out by gamification, choosing Hinge becomes a no-brainer. They reverse the objective from stay here forever to get out of here quickly.
Which proves to the market they aren't desperate for just any engagement. They want the right outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that drives premium subscription conversions, which is where they actually make their money, rather than just serving endless low-tier ads to people mindlessly swiping.
That completely reframes it. You select them because they structurally align with your ultimate goal, not just because they have a flashy interface.
Precisely.
So, okay. The buyer has selected the product, they trust you, now they have to actually hand over their money. And the purchasing phase should not be painful, yet somehow we've designed enterprise systems where you have to jump through flaming hoops just to give a company revenue.
If you have friction in the purchasing pipeline, you are literally blocking your own cash flow. The strategy here is to shift from manual to automated, using the automate versus manual trigger mapped directly to Doblin's profit model. You must decouple the revenue event from the conscious human action.
Decoupling the revenue event. Let's make that concrete for the listener. What does a decoupled profit model actually look like?
Well, look at the state of enterprise software 15 years ago. Purchasing was incredibly manual. You'd call a sales representative, negotiate a massive annual license over 3 weeks, sign a physical wet ink contract, wire a 6-figure sum.
The friction was monumental.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then companies like Stripe and Twilio entered the market. You don't sit down in a boardroom and consciously By Stripe, a developer just drops a few lines of code into your platform.
Oh, wow.
The purchase journey is entirely automated in the background based on invisible API usage.
So you're paying them a fraction of a cent every single time a transaction happens on your website. And as a business owner, you never once make a conscious decision to hit a buy now button. The friction of parting with your money is just gone.
They shifted from a manual centralized purchasing motion to an automated decentralized usage model. The profit model is tied to the value extracted, not the signature on a contract.
That is so elegant.
And in the consumer world, Amazon Subscribe and Save practically owns this pivot. Reordering dog food is a manual, low-value task. By automating the purchase journey, Amazon locked in the lifetime value of the customer. The user doesn't think about the transaction anymore. A cardboard box just magically appears on their porch. They automated the decision-making process out of existence.
So you've bought the product seamlessly. Now we enter the physical reality of getting it into your hands, the delivery phase.
Right.
This is all about how your solution bridges the gap between your server or your warehouse and the customer. Traditional delivery is inherently slow and error-prone because it relies on supply chain.
Which are notoriously fragile.
Exactly. The dossier suggests flipping the delivery using the make virtual or physical trigger, which aligns with Doblin's channel innovation type. So if you ship physical goods, make it virtual. If you ship digital goods, ground it in the physical world. Let's tackle the physical to virtual flip first.
Cybersecurity is the perfect historical example here. If you bought a massive firewall solution for your corporate network a decade ago, you would literally wait 3 weeks for a wooden pallet of heavy, rack-mounted servers to arrive at your loading dock.
Ugh, the waiting.
And then your IT team had to unpack them, rack them, and wire them up. It was a purely physical channel, bottlenecked by global shipping logistics.
The total nightmare.
Modern providers applied the virtual pivot. Instead of shipping a box, they deliver a virtualized software container or a cloud instance. The delivery journey went from 3 weeks of supply chain agony to 3 minutes of cloud provisioning.
Wait, hold on. I see how bypassing the physical world removes friction. But what about the other way around, the virtual to physical flip?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
You mentioned grounding digital goods in the physical world. Let's talk about the Apple Card. Apple took a purely digital financial product that lives entirely inside your iPhone's digital wallet, and they decided to ship you a heavy, laser-etched, titanium physical credit card.
They did.
Isn't that just a vanity play? We just talked about moving from physical to virtual to eliminate the friction of supply chains. Sending a heavy piece of metal in the mail seems like adding physical friction back into a purely digital banking system just for the sake of marketing.
It looks like a contradiction, sure, but it's actually an anchor. You have to look at the psychology of the channel. Apple is competing against established banks that have massive stone buildings and vaults.
Right.
A purely digital card feels ephemeral. It feels like it could disappear if the server crashes. By shipping that stunning, heavy physical card in premium packaging, they created a tangible anchor for an invisible service. People were literally posting unboxing videos of a credit card on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, they were.
They took a virtual product delivery and created a stunning physical channel experience. It gave the digital service an immense, tangible weight that competitors' digital-only wallets simply couldn't touch. It makes the invisible feel valuable.
Okay, that is fascinating. You use the physical channel to manufacture trust for the digital product. So the product has been delivered. You open the box or you log into the portal. Now we hit the installation phase. And as a consumer, this is where my excitement usually goes to die. You are hit with a wall of technical labor, wires, screws, database integrations.
Pure, unadulterated friction. The manifesto is incredibly clear here. The user should not have to install anything. The pivot strategy uses the nested parts or remove motion trigger tied to Doblin's product system.
Meaning what, exactly?
The complexity of the installation process needs to be nested back at the factory or hidden deep inside the cloud ecosystem. You have to completely offload the technical burden.
Think about enterprise Wi-Fi routers. Setting up a corporate network used to require a certified network engineer manually configuring every single router via a terrifying black command line interface.
A massively expensive bottleneck.
Right.
Then Cisco Meraki changed the game. They nested the intelligence in the cloud rather than the local hardware. Now, an office manager with zero technical skills can literally just plug the Meraki hardware into the wall. The device automatically calls home to the cloud, downloads its entire configuration profile, and sets itself up. You've completely removed the motion of complex local routing.
Apple executes this flawlessly in the consumer space, too. Think back to what getting a new iPhone used to entail. It was a 2-hour ordeal.
Oh, don't remind me.
You had to plug it into your laptop with a cable, open iTunes, run a massive backup, pray the software didn't crash mid-sync, and manually re-download your apps. Now, you just set your new phone down on the table next to your old phone.
Right.
The product system recognizes the nested hardware proximity, establishes a peer-to-peer connection, and transfers everything securely. The installation process is just physical proximity.
That is the remove motion trigger perfectly executed.
Yeah.
You went from a 2-hour technical headache to 0 manual labor. But getting the device turned on or the software loaded is only half the battle. Now the user actually has to make it theirs. They have to configure it.
Yes, the configuration phase. This is tuning the product to actually work for your specific quirky needs. And in the SaaS world, this is where platforms hemorrhage users.
Oh, absolutely.
You log into a new software platform for the first time, you bypass the welcome screen, and you are immediately staring at a dashboard with 50 different toggles, drop-down menus, and permission settings. It is totally overwhelming.
The cognitive load causes instant buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
The dossier deploys the distinct versus redundant structural trigger here, coupled with Dublin's service type. You eliminate the user's configuration burden by shifting it from a self-serve software dashboard into a highly specialized, distinct concierge service motion.
Superhuman, the premium email client, is the absolute poster child for this. They charge $30 a month for an email app, which sounds insane.
It does.
But they don't just give you a download link and say, good luck figuring out our complex keyboard shortcuts. They knew that configuration was their single biggest barrier to retention.
Because if you just download it and try to use it like normal Gmail, you won't get any value out of it. So they made configuration a distinct service. Every new user was required to do a 30-minute one-on-one concierge onboarding call on a Zoom video.
Wait, a real person?
A human expert literally sat there, asked about your specific daily workflow, and configured the software's keyboard shortcuts for you in real time. They shifted configuration from a redundant, boring product feature into an elite, specialized service.
It makes you feel incredibly valued, and it practically guarantees you stick with the product because it is perfectly molded to your hands. But that's a purely software example. What does configuration innovation look like when physical hardware is involved?
Well, look at Sonos in the premium audio market. If you bought a high-end surround sound system 15 years ago, you had to spend hours manually configuring the equalization.
Oh yeah, sitting on the couch with a measuring tape.
Exactly. Calculating the distance to the rear channels, adjusting the decibel levels on a tiny LCD receiver screen. Sonos completely dissolved that friction. They introduced TruePlay.
How does that work?
You literally just walk around your living room, slowly waving your smartphone up and down for 60 seconds. The app plays a series of acoustic tones, uses the microphone in your pocket to listen to the sound wave reflections, calculates the exact acoustic shape of your room, and automatically tunes the distinct EQ profile for every speaker.
That is brilliant. You don't need an audio engineering degree or a tape measure. They replaced an hour of manual EQ tuning with a 60-second physical wave of a phone.
Exactly.
But once it's tuned, we hit the next wall. Does it play nice with everything else you own? The integration phase? Nobody buys a product in a complete vacuum anymore. Everything has to talk to the legacy systems you already have.
And historically, the integration journey is a massive headache. Trying to get a shiny new tool to interface with an archaic 10-year-old legacy database usually feels like slapping duct tape on a leaky pipe.
It really does.
The strategy here uses the linked versus unrelated trigger, integrated with Dublin's network innovation type. Instead of forcing your customer's IT team to build custom API bridges between unrelated software silos, you create a network layer that seamlessly links them in the background. Your product becomes the invisible unifying layer.
I immediately think of Plaid in the financial technology space. If you were building a budgeting app 10 years ago, you had to spend millions of dollars and years of developer time trying to build custom integrations into thousands of different local and national banks.
And every single bank had its own terrible, unique legacy codebase.
Right. It was a nightmare that killed hundreds of fintech startups before they even launched. Plaid stepped in and realized the value wasn't in building another app, the value was in building the universal network.
They handle the nightmare of linking the archaic legacy systems.
Now, if you're a developer, you just integrate with Plaid's single API once, and you are instantly linked to the data feeds of almost every bank in the country. They innovated purely on the network layer.
And we're seeing this exact same network unification happen in the consumer space with the Matter protocol for smart home hardware.
Oh, yes.
Getting your Philips Hue smart lights to talk to your generic motorized blinds and your Google Nest thermostat used to require a computer science degree, endless patience, and a proprietary third-party hub.
It was so frustrating.
But by creating a unified link network standard, the integration journey just vanishes for the consumer.
Yeah.
You scan a QR code on the light bulb, and it all communicates natively across the network.
Which leaves us with the final hurdle of the pre-use era, the educational gap between the user turning the product on and actually extracting the value they paid for, the learning phase.
Yes.
And the dossier delivers a very harsh reality check to technical founders here. Nobody, under any circumstances, reads the 40-page PDF manual.
Never. If a vendor sends me a PDF, I am immediately dragging it to the trash bin on my desktop.
Same. If your product requires reading a manual before use, you have already lost the user's attention. The pivot strategy applies the introduce feedback trigger and blends it directly into Doblin's customer engagement type.
Right, you have to stop trying to teach users upfront in a synchronous environment. Instead, you create a system that teaches them asynchronously, piece by piece, while they are actually utilizing the product.
It's exactly like learning to ride a bicycle. Think about it. You don't hand a 6-year-old a textbook on the physics of gravity, gyroscopic balance, and momentum before they get on the bike.
No, you just put them on the seat with training wheels.
Exactly. They start pedaling, and they get an immediate physical response from the environment. They lean too far, they feel it, they learn by doing.
That is the perfect analogy for asynchronous feedback. Slack is brilliant at executing this in software. When you join a new corporate Slack workspace, they do not force you to watch a 20-minute orientation video on how channels and threads work.
Thank goodness.
Instead, Slackbot, an automated entity, sends you a direct message. It asks you to reply. Then it asks you to try an emoji reaction on a message. As you execute these microactions, it gives you immediate positive reinforcement. You learn the mechanics of the software by actually using the software.
Duolingo is the absolute king of this. Learning a new language is inherently difficult. It is a harsh, steep learning curve. Duolingo completely threw out the traditional grammar textbook approach. They introduced constant microsensory feedback loops.
Every correct translation gets a satisfying audio chime and a visual celebration on screen.
Yeah, and they introduced daily streaks, competitive leaderboards, and those slightly aggressive green owl push notifications to keep you engaged.
They took a slow, painful learning journey and inverted it into a hyper-engaging, real-time feedback loop. You aren't consciously studying, you are playing a game that happens to teach you Spanish.
Which completely wraps up the pre-use era. The setup is finally done. The user survived the onboarding, the integration, and the learning curve. Now we enter the core and use era. The honeymoon period is officially over.
The user now has to actually do the job they hired your product to do.
Right.
This is the value extraction phase. And the stakes are incredibly high here. If they cannot extract value seamlessly in their daily workflow, they will churn, and all that acquisition cost goes down the drain.
The first major hurdle in this daily workflow is customization. Because everyone wants things perfectly tailored to their specific niche, but absolutely nobody wants to build a database from scratch. It is this weird purgatory.
Right.
If you hand a user a totally blank canvas with a bunch of raw developer tools, they freeze.
Customizing software shouldn't feel like a second full-time job. So the dossier deploys the customize versus standardized trigger paired with Dublin structure innovation type. The architectural insight here is vital.
Break it down for me.
Instead of forcing your internal engineering team to build a million niche features for every possible customer edge case, you standardize the underlying structural building blocks. Then you open up your organizational structure to let a decentralized network of users do the heavy lifting of customization for you.
Notion is the definitive example of this. If Notion just gave you a blank digital page, it would be terrifying.
Utterly paralyzing.
But they didn't try to build a custom project manager for a bakery, and a custom CRM for a real estate firm, and a custom editorial calendar for a magazine. They built standardized Lego blocks, text blocks, toggle lists, relational databases, Kanban boards.
And then they structurally incentivize a massive creator community to build the custom templates. If you want a highly specific, complex workflow for tracking boutique real estate leads, Notion didn't build it.
A Notion power user built it and sells it or shares it.
Exactly, you just duplicate it into your workspace. They achieved infinite customization by standardizing the core primitives and decentralizing the edge cases to the community.
We see this exact same structural model in the gaming industry with Roblox. Roblox didn't build a billion custom mini-games to entertain kids. They provided the standardized physics engine, the networking layer, and the monetization structure. The players themselves build the wildly custom mini-games.
Right, the customization phase isn't just a nice feature on a settings page. It is the entire structural business model.
Which flows directly into the most critical phase of all, utilization, the actual day-to-day execution of the task.
The exact moment the user tries to get the job done. This is where SaaS products live or die. If I have to click 6 times to do the one thing I bought your app to do, I'm going to start looking for alternatives.
Oh, absolutely. If your utilization journey is clunky, bloated, or requires too much context switching, your retention numbers will plummet. The strategy here uses the separated versus combined trigger map to product performance.
Okay.
You have to fundamentally alter the product's performance mechanics to fold time. You do this by deliberately decoupling tasks that cause bottlenecks or merging disjointed tasks into a single motion.
Break that down for me because it sounds like contradictory advice. How do you know whether you're supposed to separate things or combine things?
You have to look at where the friction actually lives. You look for force combinations that cause synchronous delays, or you look for disjointed, scattered steps that cry out for a god-tier single button.
Okay, that makes sense.
Let's look at the friction of scheduling. Historically, booking a meeting was a terribly combined, synchronous nightmare. You are emailing someone asking for their availability. You wait 4 hours for a reply. You cross-reference your calendar. You propose a time. They reply that the time doesn't work. It's a massive bottleneck.
Right, it's terrible.
Calendly looked at this and separated the negotiation of time from the calendar management entirely. They decoupled the process. They gave you a static link that performs asynchronously. One party sets the parameters, the other party selects the slot on their own time. They folded time by separating the communication from the booking.
So separating them removed the friction of waiting for a synchronous reply. But on the flip side, let's look at a company that combined things perfectly. Uber.
Oh, great example.
Before ride-sharing, getting a cab meant separating 3 totally disjointed tasks. First, you call a dispatcher on a phone and wait on hold. Second, you physically go stand on a street corner and wave your hand to hail the specific car. Third, you arrive at your destination and swipe a credit card or hand over cash.
So much friction in every step.
Uber combined those 3 separated high-friction steps into a single tap on a glass screen. Dispatch, hailing, paying all combined into one product performance motion.
They folded time by combining GPS location tracking, algorithmic dispatching, and frictionless payment into one unified experience. You don't even think about the distinct steps anymore.
It's brilliant. So they're using the product daily, extracting value. Now we transition into the messy middle, the grind, upkeep, friction, and the unsexy reality of owning a product long-term.
Companies absolutely hate focusing their engineering resources here. They want to build flashy new features to attract new buyers, not fix the plumbing for existing ones.
But the dossier notes that fixing the grind actually builds an incredibly deep, impenetrable defensive moat against your competitors. Because if you solve the unsexy problems, your customers will never leave you. The switching costs become too high.
Let's start with maintenance. This is preventative upkeep. It's a tax on the user's time just to keep the product functioning at baseline. The strategy here uses the fixed versus mobile trigger tied to Doblin's process type.
You change the operational process so the upkeep happens invisibly in the background. The maintenance comes to the user, rather than forcing the user to go to a fixed location.
In the software world, think about legacy servers requiring 2.00 a.m. downtime on a Sunday to install security patches. IT teams hated it.
Totally. Modern cloud infrastructure relies on continuous integration and continuous deployment. The operational process is entirely fluid. Code updates just roll out invisibly to the live servers while you are working on a Tuesday afternoon. You don't even know the maintenance occurred.
And in the physical world, Tesla completely obliterated the traditional automotive maintenance journey. For a century, if your car's navigation system needed an update or the engine timing needed adjusting, you had to drive the physical vehicle to a fixed location, the dealership.
And sit in a sterile waiting room drinking terrible coffee for 3 hours.
Exactly. Tesla made the maintenance process mobile and invisible. You park your car in your garage, connect to your home Wi-Fi, go to sleep, and the car downloads an over-the-air update. You wake up the next morning and your regenerative braking profile is suddenly 5% more efficient.
The manual tax on the user's time is gone, but maintenance is preventative. What happens when the product actually breaks? That's the repair phase. This is purely reactive.
The user is in acute pain.
Their system crashed or the hardware failed. And making an angry user sit on hold for 45 minutes listening to elevator music to reach a support agent is practically a crime against your brand equity.
So how do you fix repair without hiring 10,000 customer support reps?
The dossier attacks this with the borrow or leverage trigger mapped to Doblin service type. The core insight is, do not bottleneck the solution at your own expensive, slow internal support team. Borrow an external asset or leverage a massive community.
Like developers using Stack Overflow or GitHub.
Yes.
When a software engineer hits a critical bug in their code, they don't submit a support ticket to Microsoft and wait 48 hours for an engineer to reply. The company leverages the global community. The repair service is completely crowdsourced. You copy the error code, paste it into Google, and you borrow the exact solution from another developer in Germany who fixed the exact same issue 3 years ago.
Exactly. You leverage the decentralized knowledge base. And we are seeing hardware companies do this in wildly inventive ways. Look at LG smart washing machines.
Oh, I've seen this.
Historically, if your washing machine stopped draining, you had to call a local repairman who would charge you $150 just to drive to your house and diagnose the problem. Now, LG leverages the advanced smartphone sensors you already own. If your washer breaks, you open their app and hold your phone's microphone up to a blinking light on the console. The machine emits a high-frequency audio diagnostic code. The app listens to it, decodes it, and instantly tells you exactly which water pump part is broken. They borrowed the massive computing power sitting in your pocket to radically upgrade their diagnostic repair service.
That is wild. Leveraging the user's own hardware to fix your hardware.
Okay, moving on to cleaning and storage. Let's talk about cleaning. This is all about getting rid of clutter. It could be physical dust on your floor or digital data debt clogging up your software ecosystem.
A cluttered environment creates massive cognitive friction. Users shouldn't have to spend their Friday afternoons sanitizing your platform just to find what they need. The trigger here is dissolve or evaporate, tied to the product system.
So the underlying system should literally clean itself.
The clutter should vanish automatically. Slack's auto-archiving data policies are the perfect digital example. If you had to manually delete every irrelevant sounds good message or expiring meme in a corporate Slack workspace to keep the search function usable, you would go insane.
Oh, absolutely.
So Slack built customizable retention policies right into the product system. IT sets a rule and messages literally dissolve after 90 days. The cleaning process is fully automated.
And the iRobot Roomba is the physical manifestation of this evaporation trigger. They turn the vacuum from a dumb, heavy tool you have to physically push around into an autonomous robotic system.
Yeah.
And the genius of their newest models is the base station. The robot vacuums your floor, drives back to the dock, and the dock sucks the dirt out of the robot's bin into a sealed bag. The system cleans the cleaner. The manual motion of sanitizing your environment just evaporated.
I love my Roomba for exactly that reason. Okay, what about storage? Sometimes you don't need a product 24/7. You need to archive old client data, or maybe you need to pause a monthly subscription because you are traveling. But companies usually make pausing or storing so incredibly difficult that users just get frustrated and cancel outright.
Which is a terrible financial miscalculation. Forcing a hard cancellation spikes your churn metrics. The pivot here applies the add versus remove space trigger to the profit model. You alter the pricing architecture based on the space occupied or the urgency required, specifically to prevent that outright churn event.
Amazon Web Services does this brilliantly with their Glacier storage tier. If a law firm has 10 terabytes of old case files they legally have to keep but rarely need to access, keeping them on active, high-speed servers is incredibly expensive.
They might look for a cheaper competitor.
Exactly. AWS steps in and offers an incredibly cheap cold storage tier. They radically drop the price, but the trade-off is that it takes a few hours to retrieve the data if you ever need it. They adjust the profit model based on the space of time, keeping the client locked securely in the AWS ecosystem.
We see this in the physical world with boutique fitness studios offering a $5 a month pause tier. If a member gets injured or travels for the summer, instead of forcing them to fully cancel and risk them never coming back, the gym adds a digital holding space.
Oh, that's smart.
You pay $5 a month to store your account and hold your grandfathered membership pricing. They adjust the profit model to capture a small trickle of revenue, but more importantly, they completely eliminate the massive friction of reacquisition later.
That is such a smart retention play. Keep them on the hook. All right, the final massive hurdle in the grind section is relocation. Moving. Moving your physical couch to a new house is awful. Migrating 10 years of complex CRM data from Salesforce to HubSpot is a high anxiety nightmare.
Customers will literally stay with a terrible overpriced software product for years simply because they're deeply terrified of the relocation process. The switching costs are too high.
Yeah, the fear is real.
The strategy here uses the change location trigger paired with Doblin's channel type. You turn the nightmare of migration into a massive competitive advantage by building a dedicated, frictionless channel that changes the location for them. You do the heavy lifting.
I absolutely love the B2B example for this one. It's my favorite story in tech. AWS Snowmobile.
Oh, this is a crazy one.
The sheer audacity of the solution is staggering. When a massive enterprise company wants to switch from an on-premise server farm to the AWS cloud, moving petabytes of data over a standard internet connection would literally take decades. The bandwidth bottleneck makes relocation impossible.
So what do?
AWS built a physical channel, an actual 18-wheeler truck, a ruggedized shipping container packed with high-speed hard drives that they physically drive to your corporate data center with a security escort.
It's insane.
You plug a massive fiber optic cable into the truck, transfer the data at local hardwired speeds, and they drive the truck back to their cloud facility, solving a purely digital cloud problem with a massive, heavy, physical 18-wheeler truck.
It is a brilliant structural inversion. They change the location of the data by building a physical migration channel, completely bypassing the internet bandwidth bottleneck that was preventing the sale.
And in the consumer space, apps like SongShift do this digitally. If you want to switch from Spotify to Apple Music, you lose all your curated playlists. SongShift automates the transfer of hundreds of playlists across platforms via API in 3 minutes. By removing the manual friction of relocation, you completely destroy the incumbent competitor's lock-in effect.
Take a deep breath, because we are entering the fourth phase, the end-of-life era. The product lifecycle is naturally coming to a close. The customer is about to do one of 3 things: evolve by upgrading, churn by replacing you with a competitor, or throw the product in the trash.
And the dossier makes a stark, unforgiving point here. If you wait until the customer is actively Googling alternatives, you have already lost. You must intercept the end-of-life cycle before it formally begins.
Let's look at the upgrade phase. You do not want the user making a massive capital expenditure decision, because the moment they have to ask their boss for a giant budget approval, that invites them to shop around and get quotes from your competitors.
Precisely. Upgrades should never feel like a disruptive, expensive event. The trigger here is change scale or scope mapped to customer engagement. Don't ask for a massive overhaul. Break the terrifying upgrade into seamless, continuous micro-engagements.
I remember the old days of buying Adobe software. You'd buy Creative Suite 5 in a giant cardboard box at a retail store. 3 years later, upgrading to CS6 was a huge, expensive $800 nightmare.
It made you actively consider switching to cheaper alternatives.
Exactly. But Adobe altered the scope. They moved to Creative Cloud. Microsoft did the same with Office 365. It's a monthly subscription, and they just drop continuous micro updates into the app in the background. You don't upgrade in a massive, disruptive, budget-busting event anymore.
They altered the scope from a massive IT headache to a frictionless, continuous financial engagement. And Apple's iPhone upgrade program is the holy grail of this in the hardware space.
Wait.
Asking a consumer to walk into a store and shell out $1,200 every 2 years creates a massive psychological barrier. The sheer scale of the price tag forces them to look at cheaper Android devices.
So Apple changed the scale. Instead of a terrifying lump sum, it is a standardized, predictable monthly micro-engagement. You pay $40 a month, and every 12 months you walk into an Apple store, hand them your old phone, and they hand you the newest iPhone.
You don't even think about researching alternative phone brands because the upgrade path is so effortless.
You have locked them into the ecosystem by changing the frequency and financial scale of the transaction. But what if the product actually dies or their needs outgrow you entirely? That's the replacement phase.
Nothing lasts forever. If their current solution is broken beyond repair, they need a new one.
The pivot here is the change timing or frequency trigger map to Doblin's network type. You intercept the replacement journey before it officially happens by leveraging a massive partner network to handle the messy reality of swapping out old junk.
In the corporate world, this is device as a service. Automatically swapping out fleets of dying corporate laptops at the exact end of a 3-year lease. The IT provider partners with hardware financiers and electronic recyclers.
They intercept the IT director with brand new machines before the director even thinks to look at a competitor's pricing.
Or look at Best Buy and car dealerships offering instant trade-in value. When your phone screen is shattered and the battery is dying, Best Buy doesn't just run a television ad hoping you come in.
No, they leverage their massive retail network to take the competitor's dying product off your hands, instantly calculate the residual value, hand you a gift card, and fund the replacement on the spot.
They absorb the massive friction of dumping the old product, which significantly lowers their actual costs to acquire you as a new customer compared to running expensive digital ads.
Which brings us to the very last journey of the life cycle: disposal. Deleting the software account or throwing the physical product in a dumpster. It is usually a guilt-ridden, highly negative act.
And here's where I want to challenge the industry standard. Why on earth do software companies make account deletion so incredibly hard to find? You want to cancel a subscription and they bury the button 6 menus deep, or worse, they make you call a phone number during business hours just to cancel a digital app. It infuriates me.
It is an incredibly toxic practice driven by short-term metric padding. Product managers are terrified of churn. They want to keep their active user counts artificially high so they look good to their investors on the quarterly earnings call.
But the dossier is uncompromising here. It destroys long-term brand equity. You are burning the bridge.
Exactly. The strategy here uses the reverse or invert trigger map to brand or process. You turn the negative act of throwing something away into a loyalty-building brand asset. You want to leave an immaculate final impression so they come back later.
Turn corporate garbage into a victory, like elite IT asset disposal. Throwing away old, deprecated enterprise servers is a massive liability. You have hard drives full of sensitive customer data. Elite IT inverted the disposal process into a premium service.
How do they do it?
They roll in with military-grade physical hard drive shredders, securely destroy the data on-site, ethically recycle the rare earth metals, and hand the CEO a beautiful green ESG certificate to put in their annual report. They turn disposal into bragging rights.
And Patagonia does this beautifully with consumer apparel through their Worn Wear program. Instead of feeling guilty about throwing away a ripped, destroyed jacket, Patagonia buys it back from you for store credit. They repair the jacket and resell it as vintage gear on their website. They turn the literal disposal of their product into a sustainable, closed-loop brand process.
Nespresso does this too, managing the complete recycling loop of their aluminum coffee pods. The guilt of throwing away a metal pod every morning was hurting their brand. So they give you a prepaid bag, you drop the used pods in, UPS picks it up from your porch for free, and Nespresso smelts the aluminum down to make new pods.
By taking complete ownership of the disposal journey, they remove the consumer's environmental guilt and build an incredibly sticky brand moat.
It is a brilliant inversion. So we have thoroughly covered all 17 friction points. We've used these triggers to dream up highly disruptive structural ideas.
Yes, I have all these amazing disruptive ideas now. But here is the massive roadblock. How do I actually get the chief financial officer to fund these ideas without making up fake 5-year return on investment projections?
Right.
Because if I walk into a boardroom tomorrow and pitch building a fleet of 18-wheeler trucks to move our clients' digital data, they're going to literally laugh me out of the room.
This is exactly where 90% of corporate innovation labs fail. The dossier refers to this as the monolithic fallacy, forcing product teams to invent fake, heavily padded revenue numbers for abstract products that do not even exist yet.
It leads to executives only funding safe, boring, incremental ideas because the math looks safer, while they actively kill the truly disruptive ones.
So what is the antidote to the monolithic fallacy?
Real options analysis, ROA.
Hold on. Real options analysis sounds like something pulled straight from a Wall Street trading floor. How does an options trading strategy apply to deciding whether to build a new software feature?
The core philosophy is the same. On Wall Street, an option gives you the right, but not the obligation, to make a bigger investment later based on how the market moves. In product design, you are not asking the CFO to fund a massive multi-million-dollar product launch. You are asking for a tiny amount of money to buy a staged option of information. You systematically de-risk the journey. Phase 1 is the option to explore. You just have a hunch.
But how do you mathematically prove to the CFO that your hunch isn't just a fake problem you made up?
You use the bivariate risk and impact matrix. You objectively score the risk of being wrong about this problem on a scale of 1 to 10. And you score the potential business impact on a scale of 1 to 10. You multiply them. If your priority score is over 64, The math grants you permission to explore further.
Okay, that makes sense.
You deploy what the dossier calls the Socratic deconstructor to aggressively question assumptions until you hit the actual structural floor of the problem.
Okay, so if my problem scores a 72, the CFO gives me a little budget to move to phase 2. The option to validate. This is where we gather empirical data from our users.
Yes, and the dossier delivers a very stern, mathematically rigorous warning here about how companies gather user feedback. I cannot stress this enough. Never, ever average 1 to 5 Likert scale survey responses.
Oh, come on. Every corporate survey in existence says, rate your satisfaction from 1 to 5, and then the product team proudly reports that the average satisfaction score is 3.8.
It is a severe statistical violation. Ordinal data is not math. Human emotion is not strictly linear. The psychological distance between a rating of a 3 and a 4 is absolutely not the same as the distance between a 4 and a 5. When you average those numbers together, you get meaningless, homogenized garbage that hides the extreme pain points. Instead, the dossier provides the top-box JTBD formula, need equals R times G.
Need equals R times G. Let's break down the actual mechanics of that formula.
First, you find the underlying urgency, which is the variable G for gap. You take the percentage of people who rate a specific problem as highly important, only looking at the top-box scores of 4s or 5s. Then, you subtract the percentage of people who are currently highly satisfied with your solution. That unfulfilled gap is your true market urgency. You find the angry, desperate people.
That makes intuitive sense. You ignore the lukewarm middle and focus on the unfulfilled gap. But what is the R variable?
The R is the Pearson correlation coefficient. Because frankly, customers lie. If you ask a customer what features they want, they will tell you every single feature is incredibly important. To cut through the noise, you correlate their stated satisfaction with that specific step directly to their overall satisfaction with your entire product. If they say the new dashboard color is super important, but the data shows the color doesn't actually correlate to them renewing their annual contract, it's a vanity feature. If the Pearson correlation is high, fixing that specific step actually moves the needle on the business's bottom line.
That is incredibly rigorous. You are proving mathematically that the problem drives revenue before you ever build the solution. Okay, so we have the math. The option is validated. Phase 3 is the option to execute. We build the minimum viable prototype, the MVPR, and the strict rule here is do not write a million lines of code. You build a Wizard of Oz manual concierge service.
Exactly. You prove the unit economics work manually before you invest engineering resources into building the automated software.
It reminds me of the classic mechanical Turk concept. If you cannot solve the customer's problem for 10 people with your own bare hands, a messy Excel spreadsheet and a few phone calls, a fancy artificial intelligence algorithm is absolutely not going to save you. You have to prove the fundamental value exchange first.
That is the perfect way to look at it. And right before you ask for the big budget to finally scale that prototype, you do the ultimate check, the 3-tier PR FAQ. You draft 3 distinct documents as if the product has already launched. The customer FAQ to test market adoption and messaging. The internal FAQ to test business viability, proving your customer acquisition cost is drastically lower than the lifetime value. And finally, the private equity FAQ to test the long-term asset value and exit optionality for the board.
It violently forces you out of divergent dreaming and into convergent, hardcore business execution. Let's synthesize the massive journey we have just taken. We started with this fundamental truth that innovation isn't just throwing darts at a whiteboard and hoping for a viral hit.
Not at all.
True, durable innovation is systematically mapping the 17 chronological points of friction in a customer's lifecycle. It is applying rigid, counterintuitive triggers like actively inverting the brand to push people away, automating the purchase, or leveraging an external crowd network for repairs to force the lazy human brain to invert the problem. And then, crucially, de-risking those wild ideas with cold, hard statistical math before you spend a dime.
If you are listening to this right now, consider this a direct, pragmatic challenge to you and your product team. Stop playing firefighter. Stop endlessly tweaking the superficial symptoms of a broken system just to hit a quarterly metric. Find the actual root cause hidden in one of these 17 journeys, grab a structural constraint trigger, and completely re-architect the unit economics of the problem.
Seriously, I want you to think about the most frustrating, friction-filled task you have to do in your own daily life right now. Maybe it's reconciling a complex expense report or managing a clunky piece of legacy software at work. If a company applied just one of these structural triggers, like making the data entry process completely invisible in the background, or inverting the disposal journey to actually make you feel good about it, how entirely different would your day look? What invisible structural friction are you accepting simply because no one has taken the time to map the journey yet? So the next time you find yourself staring at that intimidating blank whiteboard in a corporate brainstorming session,
Don't wait for lightning in a bottle. Look for the blueprint.
thanks for diving deep with us.